This section is called inform, coach, assess, repeat. And this is such a missing component in so many relationships, because we either hear that paraprofessionals may feel that they are kind of put out there and they don't get a lot of guidance or feedback. Sometimes it's because they're really great at what they're doing. Sometimes it's because the staff is just very, very busy. But even if you're really great at what you're doing, feedback is really helpful. Even just to have somebody say what you're doing is really great, and keep doing it, right? And we also find, I think, that a lot of teachers they've never been in a facilitator or coaching role before. So they're not quite sure what tools to use for that. Okay, so let's talk about some of the strategies, some of the discrete strategies that we can use to be supportive. And the first one is one that we probably don't see used enough, and that is letting paraprofessionals observe you and letting them observe you and your co-teacher. So, let them see how you work in the classroom together. Let them watch you with individual students or small groups, especially before they are asked to work with those same exact groups or those same exact students. I find that so many paraprofessionals, they'll get some of that opportunity maybe in the very beginning. Some paraprofessionals say they never got to observe anybody work with that particular student. And if that student has, has some behavior needs, and we are giving feedback or written tips, but they've never seen a teacher work through some of those struggles, that's going to be really hard for that person to handle. If that student, is using a certain kind of, augmentative communication, and they've never seen how a teacher is supportive of that student during, in the context of standards-based instruction, that's going to present a challenge. And this shouldn't just be in the beginning of the year. It's a way to say that, this is dynamic. Kids change, the demands change in the classroom. So it doesn't have to be a half day. We're suggesting that just in small bits that we say, would you like to, observe during this period of time? Or I'm going to actually work with Micah. Do you want to just, hang with me, or would you like to take some notes for a handful of minutes? Giving some of those opportunities, not just in some of those more precarious kinds of situations, but making sure that that's an option, at least in small doses throughout the year. And that's not the only kind of observation, right, Jennifer?
Absolutely, Paula. And before we even move on, I just want to say something or lift an idea about the observation in general, is that can create some discomfort for people. This idea of, especially if you're a paraeducator, having another set of eyes on you, and that's the only goal at that time is to observe, can present some discomfort. And so, I think that I heard you say just a few minutes ago that establishing kind of a system or a routine of observing throughout the year will alleviate some of that, and having conversations around the goal of observation, and being intentional with language when feedback is given. That way it is supportive and not seen as something that is highlighting some deficiency in the individual's work. But so I'm thinking.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is just, thank you. That is such an incredible point. And I had never thought about in exactly those terms, that if I first say, hey, here are all the times when you can watch what I'm doing, then it doesn't feel so overwhelming when we get to the second bullet point, which is now there's going to be times when I'm going to observe you.
Absolutely. And because paras, this is the opportunity, you're going to be providing some coaching, you're going to be providing some professional development for your paraeducator. And really the way we grow is through, a form of growth is through observation and feedback, right? And so as paras are learning about their roles, learning about how to facilitate peer tutoring, learning about how to facilitate group work, how to facilitate relationship building between the student that they're assigned to and their other classmates, right? They're going to be learning about, it might be that they are supporting students through a new feeding programs, in terms of this example. And so in order to improve, there has to be some form of observation and a system or structure for providing that feedback and a space for growth, right? And so as the teacher provides that feedback, the teacher and paraeducator can have a conversation around what are some things we can do differently? What are some things I need to add to my practice? What are some things I'm doing well? Because we need that validation, right? So give them, that validation. Here's what's really going well. Here's some recommendations for addressing that need.
It's so important. I love everything that you said. And the idea that when you blend in, I mean, of course, there's going to be feedback suggesting, can you try this instead? But I mean, if we had that great collaborative relationship, this process can be something that we look forward to, because, if you are hearing from me that I cannot believe you just, created that space for those kids to play successfully together. I've never seen him initiate like that. What are you doing right? And what are you doing well? And teach me, when you are getting both kinds of input and feedback, this process can actually be, well, not just fruitful, but can be kind of exciting to engage in. So you're absolutely right. We want to communicate that not only in word, but in deed, that this is not about looking at what's not happening, but it's also about really highlighting what's going well so we can build on that. And so that last bullet is really about making sure we're giving that rich feedback. This is not just about, yeah, keep going, you're doing it right, or, you're a great asset. Let's keep going with this. Can we fade off more direct support? Can we increase the complexity of that communication menu? And because the student probably very well, more intimately than some others, you are my best resource for, answering some of those questions. So I want to give as much direct feedback as possible. Can you, cue him to ask for help from a peer before he seeks help? Now, as a paraprofessional on the team, that I really value kids being interdependent, and that, that it's not only okay for me to fade back some of that direct support, but it's a cherished, kind of value here. So really helpful that if those things are not happening, that you formalize them a little bit. So we actually even have one tool here. This is just an example of many things that you could do to formalize conversations, but this is one that I've used a lot. And Jennifer, we've used a lot in some of the collaboration that we've done with Chicago public school teachers. But just sometimes if you're not exactly sure, I'm gonna go back to this slide, how to give feedback in a way that feels like, how do I throw this at you in a way that helps you to catch it, in a way that feels like this is really productive, and this doesn't feel, in any way that it's personal. And then, as I say, sometimes bring it to, bring it to your data collection, or have it be something that you work on collaboratively. So this is one example of, a form that I've used to have us look at specific tasks and how we can grow together in helping a student to become more independent or interdependent with the classroom and peers and the community. And so if I'm trying to give some feedback, this is a way that we can kind of look very specifically at this task of, I don't know, the morning meeting, or at a task of a student who's going to, even an extracurricular activity at the end of the day, or the task might be even just going through a lunch line. And we are going to talk together, the two of us or the three of us in our collaborative team, about, what those difficulties look like, what are the current supports that are being provided, and how are we going to provide appropriate independence or interdependence. We're going to say, well, should we teach some new skills? Should we provide some indirect supports? This is a conversation that all three of you need to be having, because, or four of you, or how many are in the space. And these documents are kind of I don't say easy way, but it's a shorthand, especially when there's a larger group, like three of you, or four of you, maybe two paraprofessionals, at different points in the day. It's a way for us to have a conversation and around some goals that are like tangible, it's really specific. So in some instances, if you are looking for ways to be more clear in how you're giving feedback, maybe bring in some kind of a tool